Great. Well, welcome. Just wanted to cover, a few things on SafeVisitor, clear up some areas, make sure we understand how some of the processes work. I will tell you that we've got some pushes that'll be coming out, let's say Wednesday on Friday. So every other Thursday I meet with the developers, and there'll be a list of things that'll be pushed out usually on Friday morning. And so one of the, here's our music again. Hopefully I didn't mess up the audio too bad. One of the big issues is, that's been pushed out is the timeout issue, making sure that, and I'm going to see if I can. Okay, I think I got that covered. So I'm going to, we'll push out updates generally every other Friday morning. And, some of the fixes I know that came in were if it times out, and it doesn't even look like it timed out, so that fix should be coming out, going into place. And so now we have a 2-hour timeout set here, which is about as far as we would ever want to go on a secured system. It's probably farther than we would normally go, but so after 2 hours of inactivity, it'll log out, but they're putting in place so it makes it obvious that it's logged out, so you don't try to scan and then realize it's logged out and have to log in and do it again. I can also tell you that we're looking at some other types of technology, so you're going to see consistent changes happening every few weeks for quite some period of time. And so feedback is really much appreciated. And so we're looking at things like, one of the things I'm going to talk tomorrow about is the idea of a partial self-service kiosk, and things to just make the front-end process, more simplistic for you. We can't do full self-service because then anybody could walk into a building. It wouldn't be any better than what you had before. But we're looking at ways to really make the process a lot cleaner, quicker, and simpler on the front end as well. But a couple things I want to mention right here on your home screen. And so right here you see all buildings. So I'm logged in as an administrator. So administrators can actually sort through all the buildings. And so they could click on any particular building and see who's logged into that building at any given time. If you're working in a specific building as an attendant, you're just going to see what is in your building. And so it keeps a running log here down below of anybody that's currently in your building. One of the features we added about 6 or 7 weeks ago was a quicker checkout process. So you can scan the temporary ID tags as they leave, but we actually put this little drop-down arrow next to the name. And so if somebody walks out, I know I was at Fort Wayne Community Schools last week, and in their admin building, they're probably processing 100 to 150 people a day. A lot of times their attendants on the way out will grab their temporary ID and set it down here, and then they can click on this button. Or as they walk out, you see who they are. If you click this down arrow, it just automatically logs them out of your system. So really that is probably the easiest way of doing it. Futuristically, I'm really looking at some RFID type technology that would be an ID, even the temporary badges, to where it could automatically do this as they exit a building. And so in the interim, that's really probably the fastest way to log somebody out of a building, just one click, and to log them out. So processing temporary visitors, you're always using this left mustard color temporary visitor selection. In the future, as you roll out volunteers or vendors, then you would check them in here where they already have an existing ID badge. And so for a temporary visitor, I'm going to click on this. I can either do it by scanning the license with a 2D barcode, and so I know it's come up that there's been some Mexican consulate IDs. You could have passports, and so a lot of these foreign IDs are not going to have the 2D barcodes. Like a passport's not going to have a 2D barcode, so you can't scan it, but you've always got the ability to enter them manually. So you can, do a search by name, and if they're, obviously not in the system. So if I start typing my name, it's actually going to show, wow, Mike's visited here several times. But if I'm typing, a new person, so let's just go ahead and keep typing here. Say it's Michael Johnson. There's no Michael Johnson in the system. If I click on this create a new visitor, click this arrow button, I have to add these 3 fields here to be able to enter somebody manually. The other piece, let me back out of here and go back to the dashboard. We'll go ahead and scan my license. So if I'm scanning, I don't have to do anything differently. Just reads the barcode on the back of the license. And so we should be able to handle all of North America. And so that's Canadian, that's government, that's military. Every license has multiple versions. So in Indiana, there's probably currently 4 to 5 versions of ID cards. And so if they get scratched, it could cause a problem being able to read it. And actually yesterday had somebody that works for the state, we were going through this, and they had a relatively new license, and it just wouldn't pick up the barcode, and I think we looked at it, and there was a scratch or some damage there. So it doesn't prevent you from entering somebody into the system just because you can't scan them. So if it's a foreign ID or an ID that's not scanning for some reason, and we know we've had some issues with Illinois and Ohio, and we think we have those pinpointed, and so have done some testing on those. And so some of it is just the quirkiness with different state updates, making sure that changes in fields get updated in our API. And so, so once we do this, scanned in, click continue, you'll notice right up here it just ran background check. And so what that does when it runs a background check is it actually does 2 things. First, it's going to run a national sex offender registry search. And so we can see right here there's no potential matches. It also ran an internal background check against your exclusion list. So Wayne Township schools can create their own internal exclusion list. These are people that could be trespass issues, could be court-related issues, could be terminated ex-employees that are problematic. Those are lists you control internally, and so it checks against that list as well. And so I'm going to back out and I'm going to show you how that works. So if we had a temporary visitor, let's say we scanned their ID, but I'm going to add it manually because it's a sex offender search. And so as we enter them into the system, and so we've got their information, we run the background check, bam, you now notice that it had a potential match down here on the sex offender registry. And so 2 things. One, just because information shows down here at the bottom does not mean that that's necessarily the person standing in front of you. And the reason for that is you notice here on his date of birth, it does not have one. And so this is an Indiana sex offender registry. And so with this particular person, if we use an exact date of birth, there's a chance that it might exclude this data, because in Indiana, the sex offender registry goes by year of birth. And so if you go to the registry, it's going to show these 43 years old, I think, or whatever his age is. And so what we have to do to run the sex offender registry search, because every state is different, we actually have to put in basically a plus or minus 12 months. And so basically, when it puts in a date of birth, it's going to search any match on that name plus or minus 12 months. So it's a little bit wider search, especially if we ran somebody like a John Smith. And you can imagine how many potential John Smiths in the United States on the sex offender registry. And so now, I would say Fort Wayne's been running this for probably a year and a half, and I was up there last week, and their attendants were telling me, we can usually clear these out in a second or 2, just looking at the photograph and the person standing here, and determine whether or not it's them. One of the other things that we just added last week was the ability now to say, well, it kind of looks like the person standing in front of me, so I can click on it now, and it's actually going to take you over to a page and pull in the data from Family Watchdog. And so it's going to give you a little bit more information. And so you can see it gives you the full name. Again, it's the age instead of date of birth. So it gives you a little bit more information here to help you determine whether or not this person standing in front of you is actually on the sex offender registry or not. If in fact they are on the sex offender registry, and so now you're going to deny, you're going to simply click on this button where it says deny and add exclusion. Actually, what's going to happen in the future, and I'll know tomorrow exactly when, this is going to be just a deny button, because adding exclusions is an administrative function. And so I think we're going to build it into a queue where you hit deny, it may put it into a queue then for administrators like Maureen could look at it and say, yeah, we need to go ahead and add them to the internal exclusion list as well. And so if you try to allow entry with somebody that has a hit down here below, so I'm just going to type in some generic information here, it is not going to allow me to do it because of the hits here. And so it will actually allow you to override that if there's not an exclusion. And so with Brett David King, he's already been added to the exclusion list. So if they're on an exclusion list, you can't even bypass this. If it's only a potential match on the sex offender registry, you can still allow and print the badge. But when you click on this, you're going to get a pop-up disclaimer just to make sure you reviewed the information below. And so as I back out, I'll show you what just an exclusion looks like. So I think Sam is on our exclusion list. He looks a lot like me. And so you can see here that Sam is on the internal exclusion list. He's not on the sex offender registry, but he's been denied access to demo building because of whatever reason. It's not a valid reason here on the right. But that is how it works. So there's two types of background checks being run every time you scan somebody in as a temporary visitor. When you get to the point where you're also managing other types of visitors, volunteers or vendors, it's not going to run a sex offender registry check on them because they would have already been credentialed at a higher level. So a volunteer would have had, I think you're going to run limited criminal histories, or a vendor for a school district has to have the same level of background check that a school employee has. And so they have been pre-credentialed. So it's not going to run any kind of a national background check on them, but every visitor that enters the building will be checked against your exclusion list. So that's kind of the big functionality in terms of, just kind of how to manage and process visitors as they're entering and exiting the buildings. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to unmute everybody and see if we have any questions I can answer over the next few minutes before we wrap up.
Clarify for...
All right. Now I can... Yes.
Yeah, this is Maureen speaking. I just wanted to clarify for our end users that you use the word administrator a lot, and here in our school system we think of principals and assistant principals, administrators. Where here we're talking about administrators of the software program. So that would be my function and not the function of the principal or assistant principal to add to that deny list. So I just wanted to clarify that for our users.
Okay, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any questions about any parts of the process? One of the things I think I went over really quickly, and let me go back to that because I want to cover that, is let's go back to Sam. So let's go back to this background check. And as we run this background check, oh, I didn't pick his name, so let's just throw this in here. Actually, let me do it this way so I know it actually hits on the exclusion list. Here we go. And so when it runs this background check, it's not going to automatically send an emergency notification at this moment, not until you actually deny them entry. So you've got to, one, look at that potential sex offender registry information below, And once you review this information and you say, all right, this is a person on the exclusion list, or this is a sex offender in front of me, once you hit this denied button, what it's going to do is it's going to activate an emergency text message. And so right now that text message will go to the building contact, whomever that is at your building that's responsible for security, or an administrator that's assigned to that, so that they work their way toward the front desk if you need assistance. So that is anytime you deny somebody based on a background check, it's going to automatically send that email and text that contact at the building level. Also, we're adding a function where it would text Maureen or Pete or whomever at a global level on an information basis, so they see if somebody's being denied access to a building based on a background check. The other function, and I need to mention this, I forgot to, was as you're working at the front office, main point of contact, anytime you have any kind of issue at that front office where you need assistance, we built this emergency button right here on the top left. And that is exactly what this is for. We moved it away from everything else so you wouldn't accidentally, click on this. But what this emergency button does is you may have somebody walk in. You haven't even started the process of scanning them in or gaining entry into the building, but maybe they come in, they're belligerent from the minute they walk in the door, and you need some assistance immediately. And so on every page, you've got an emergency button. If you click on this emergency button, it actually sends an emergency text to your building contact, as well as we'll send it globally, that you need emergency assistance at the front desk right now. And so that text is a little bit different than the text for denying entry. And so it'll immediately send that. And so we built that in just for your protection, because the last thing we want, I'm a former law enforcement officer, and so the last thing we would want is for you to have to pick up the phone when you have somebody belligerent, because one, you have to take your attention away from that person. Two, when you start talking on the phone, just like I'm talking right now, they're going to hear everything you say. It could further inflame the situation. So now it's a very fast, quick click. It won't further inflame the situation. It doesn't cause you to be distracted from what they may be doing, but it will get a text sent out immediately to get somebody at the front desk to help with this particular problem that you're having. But that is pretty much the system. If you have questions, Maureen has all of my contact information. I'm more than happy for you to send me emails or give me a call as you're using the system and have questions about this or that, or how to process, or how even feedback on, boy, it'd sure be nice if. All of that can channel through Maureen. I think we're going to bring together a group of schools that are using the software and create an advisory board where we can discuss things that, further enhancements as we move forward with this. So feedback is greatly appreciated.
Mike, Melissa from Ben Davis High School had a question she had entered in the chat about military IDs.
Yeah, I see a few in there. Let me go through these. I'll try to take them in order. Yeah, and so let me ask, because I need to ask with the developers and figure out what the issue is. We should be able to scan most versions of a military ID. And Melissa, one thing that would be really helpful is, so the scanners actually work like, really they're a keyboard. That's what a scanner is. It's just basically working as a keyboard. So if you have one that doesn't work, your computer probably has a notepad. If you take this notepad and you were to scan that military ID, I just scan my driver's license, and so
yeah, Mike, we don't have our system is such that we don't have access to notepad like that. We'll have to come up with another way for them to do that.
Okay, because when we have an issue where it's not scanning a specific ID that has the 2D barcode, we really need to have that scanned into something, some kind of text document, so that we can see that it's actually parsing or pulling the data. Because if it's parsing and pulling the data, then there's an issue with the software not pulling in. If it's not parsing or pulling the data, then I go to the the company that provides the scan technology and figure out why it's not pulling the data from the card. So it helps us kind of pinpoint where to go. And then all right, I think that was the only question that I see. So again, just let me know if you have any questions. Maureen, I recorded this, so I'll get this uploaded into YouTube or Vimeo sometime today and send you a link over that you can share with those that couldn't participate.
Perfect.
This is Mary at BDU. I just have a quick question.
Sure.
In following up, because I took my military ID out and I scanned it to see what was happening, and it does beep and scan it, but then it says no data found.
Okay, that's very helpful. I appreciate that. And your military ID, Mary, what is your email? So if I need to send you an email to ask you a couple questions about that.
Okay, it's mary.thompson@wayne.k12.in.us.
Great. All right. Yeah, so that sounds like an API issue, so I may have to ask you a couple more questions about your ID, and then I'll pass it over to the API developers.
Okay.
Yeah, and Melissa added that she said that hers won't scan at all at the high school. For some reason, her audio is not working, so
Okay.
FYI.
And so it did the same, so she has a military ID and it did the same thing, it scanned but no data?
No, I don't, Melissa, I'm watching your chat here. It says that at VD they won't even scan. It doesn't give the beep and the flash.
Okay. All right. All right, well, I will follow up with probably some follow-up questions for those two so we can get them over and see what the problem is.
Okay, yeah, and it looks like at the high school they do 5 to 7 a day, so.
I just saw that pop in, okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So
yeah.
We'll jump on that ASAP. Okay, well, thanks. You guys have a great day.
All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
You bet. See ya.